Welcome to Talk Tickers. Today we're doing a deep dive into Taysha Gene Therapies, that's TSHA, and their Q3 2025 earnings call. It dropped pre-market November 4th.
Yeah, and it's a really interesting one. Gene therapy story, obviously, but the market kind of, well, it went down, right? Stock slipped over 4% after the release.
Despite some, pretty significant clinical news.
Exactly. So that's what we need to unpack. Why the dip? You see zero revenue, maybe that's it. Or do the forward-looking comments, especially around de-risking, justify maybe a different view?
That's the plan. Let's cut through that initial reaction and really understand the path management laid out for their lead candidate, TSHA 102, especially this accelerated de-risking strategy they talked about.
Okay. Where should we start? The financials that maybe spooked people.
Yeah, let's get those headlines out of the way first, the ones that likely drove that initial weakness.
All right, let's rip the Band-Aid off. Revenue for the quarter was zero. A flat zero.
Which was definitely a miss compared to expectations, right? Analysts were looking for something like, 1.3 to 1.5 million?
Yeah, around there. So that zero probably hit the stock pretty immediately.
Okay, but then on the flip side, the EPS, the GAAP EPS, came in at -9 cents.
Which actually met consensus, so not a surprise there.
And the total net loss was $32.7 million.
Right. And, that loss number, it sounds big, but you really need to dig into why the loss was that big. It tells a story.
Okay, so break down that burn rate for us.
Well, the R&D expenses, they jumped significantly, up 72% compared to last year, hitting $25.7 million.
Wow, 72%.
Yeah, but management was really clear. This wasn't just, keeping the lights on. It was targeted spending, specifically on building out the pivotal trial and what they call BLA-enabling manufacturing activities.
BLA, the Biologics License Application, so the paperwork for the FDA approval.
Precisely. And a big part of that spend was for PPQ manufacturing, process performance qualification. Think of it like the dress rehearsal for making the drug commercially. They have to prove they can make it reliably, safely, at scale. It's expensive, yes, but it's absolutely necessary for that final BLA submission. It shows they're moving past pure research.
So it's spending tied directly to getting closer to approval.
Exactly. Execution spend. Commercial readiness spend.
Which makes the other side of the coin, the balance sheet, even more important. How much cash do they have?
They finished the quarter strong there, $297.3 million in cash and equivalents. And crucially, they stressed this gives them runway well into 2028.
Into 2028, so about 3 years of runway.
Yeah, and they emphasized that this cash position supports these accelerated plans we're talking about. They're not worried about needing more capital while they push this forward.
Okay, so the market might see zero revenue, high spend.
Right. But the deeper look is zero revenue, high spend on things that speed up potential approval, backed by cash to see it through. Big difference.
Got it. So let's pivot to that payoff then. The regulatory wins and the de-risking for TSHA 102. The big news in Q3 was getting breakthrough therapy designation from the FDA.
Yeah, that came in late September. And, breakthrough therapy, that's basically the FDA saying, okay, this looks really promising for a serious condition with unmet need.
It signals the potential for a big improvement over what's available.
Exactly. And it helps streamline the whole review process, gets them more interaction with the FDA. It's a significant stamp of approval, even at this stage.
Okay, but designation is one thing. You mentioned the R&D spend is up because of pivotal trial build-out. What specific agreements did they reach with the FDA that makes this phase feel more de-risked, not just more expensive? Management seemed really excited about the trial alignment.
They called it a game changer, and I think they're right. They got final alignment on the REVEAL Part B pivotal protocol. And critically, they locked down the statistical analysis plan, the SAP.
The SAP. Explain why getting that agreed up front is so vital.
Well, the SAP is the rule book. It defines exactly how the trial data will be collected, measured, analyzed, and what counts as success. Getting the FDA to sign off on that before you even start dosing patients, especially with complex gene therapies, is huge. It removes a massive chunk of regulatory uncertainty down the road, no goalpost moving later on.
Okay, clarity from day one. So what does the trial actually look like?
It's targeting 15 patients, specifically kids in the developmental plateau stage, so 6 years and older.
And the success metric.
It's the response rate. They need to see patients gaining or regaining developmental milestones. They've defined 28 specific ones.
Okay, how many milestones does a patient need to hit to be counted as a responder?
Just one.
Wait, really? Just 1 out of 28? That sounds like a low bar.
It sounds low, I get it. But you have to understand Rett syndrome. It causes this profound developmental stall often regression, where kids lose skills they once had. So, in that context, gaining back or achieving any single defined milestone, maybe it's better hand use, maybe some purposeful communication, a motor skill that's considered clinically meaningful, a real sign the therapy might be altering the disease course.
Against the natural history of just stagnation or decline.
Precisely. And they only need 5 out of the 15 patients, that's a 33% response rate, to meet the primary endpoint.
And how is that 33% threshold compared to what they saw earlier?
Well, in their Part A data, the earlier phase, they saw a 100% response rate by the 9-month mark. So 33% feels like a very achievable target, statistically speaking.
Okay, that context definitely helps. You mentioned altering the disease course. They're positioning this as a disease-modifying gene therapy, right?
Yes, and that's absolutely core to the story. It's not just managing symptoms like the currently approved drug, DAYBUE. TSHA 102 aims to fix the underlying genetic issue.
Which, if successful, implies a much bigger potential impact in market.
Huge difference. A potential one-time treatment versus ongoing symptomatic relief.
Right. This is all building towards the really provocative part of the call, this timeline acceleration. They mentioned a 6-month interim analysis baked into the FDA agreement.
Yes. And this is key. Management explicitly stated that this 6-month data could potentially be enough to support the BLA submission.
Wow. Okay, so instead of waiting for the full, say, 12-month data.
Correct. If the 6-month data is strong enough and looks predictive, it could let them file the BLA potentially 2 quarters, maybe even more, earlier than they originally planned.
That's massive in biotech time. Saves money, gets to market faster. But why would the FDA agree to that? 6 months seems pretty early for a gene therapy efficacy readout.
It comes back to that Part A data again. It showed a really clear, strong effect early on. They hit an 83% response rate at 6 months, which then deepened to 100% by 9 months.
Ah, so the thinking is the 6-month data is likely representative of the longer-term benefit.
That's the bet management is making, and apparently the FDA is open to it based on the data package they've seen. They believe that pattern will hold in Part B.
Okay, so if the data holds, the timeline compresses. But that puts enormous pressure on execution, specifically on enrolling those 15 patients quickly.
Absolutely. Enrollment is the immediate bottleneck or opportunity, depending how you see it. First patient dosing is slated for this quarter, Q4 2025.
And how fast do they think they can get all 15 patients in?
They gave some pretty aggressive timelines. Because there's apparently high demand from families and sites are ready with identified patients, they said a best-case scenario could be enrolling all 15 within just 3 months.
3 months. For a rare disease gene therapy trial, that's lightning speed.
It really is. Conservatively, they guided towards 3 to 6 months. But even 6 months is fast.
What gives them and the FDA confidence they can manage that kind of speed with quality data?
They really emphasized the rigor of the data collection. These milestones aren't subjective judgments. They're objectively defined, everything is video recorded, and it's all assessed centrally by independent reviewers. They've tried to remove bias and ensure the data is rock solid.
Okay, so the clinical path seems clearer, potentially faster. What about the business side? Any strategic moves there?
Yeah, a pretty significant one, actually. Astellas had an option for the global rights to TSHA 102, but that option expired in October.
Meaning Taysha now has.
Full, unencumbered, global rights back. They control 100% of the asset worldwide.
Which gives them a lot more flexibility.
Maximum strategic optionality, as they put it. They can decide whether to partner later, maybe regionally, or go it alone globally. They hold all the cards now heading towards that potential BLA.
And are they signaling which way they might lean?
Well, they just appointed a new chief commercial officer, David McNinch. That signals they're starting to build out the commercial infrastructure.
Preparing for launch already.
Seems like it. They highlighted the team has deep gene therapy launch experience. Zolgensma was mentioned. With cash into 2028 and this accelerated path, they're not waiting around, they're gearing up.
Okay, so summarizing the near-term catalyst then. First, pivotal dosing happening basically now, Q4 25. Then rapid enrollment over the next, say, 3-6 months. That enrollment speed dictates when the 6-month interim analysis happens.
Exactly. And then longer term, we'll get an update on the Part A patients, the earlier cohort, sometime in the first half of 2026.
All right. This sets us up nicely for our not financial advice segment.
Yeah.
Given all the zero revenue, the high spend, but also the de-risking and acceleration, what's an outrageous but plausible trade idea here?
Well, first, let's acknowledge the stock price, around $4.28 post-earnings. That price clearly reflects the market fixating on that zero revenue number, maybe the historical spend.
It's pricing the past, not necessarily this accelerated future timeline.
Precisely. So the trade idea hinges on that disconnect. We're talking about potentially a leveraged long position, maybe using defined risk options, specifically targeting that interim data readout timeframe.
Okay, what's the core thesis?
The thesis is the market is wrong to focus solely on the historical financials. The real story is the highly de-risked regulatory path and the dramatically compressed timeline to potential BLA submission.
And the trigger for the trade.
The trigger is hitting that aggressive enrollment target. Let's say they dose all 15 patients by maybe end of Q1 2026. That means the 6-month interim data readout happens around what? Late Q3 2026.
Okay.
If that interim data confirms the party efficacy, as management clearly expects, then boom, the BLA acceleration becomes real. Suddenly, the market has to reevaluate. The timeline shifts from worrying about the cash runway lasting to 2028 to potentially seeing revenue generation starting much sooner, maybe mid-2027, if approval follows quickly.
So the bet isn't necessarily that the interim data will be surprisingly good, but that hitting the interim analysis milestone on that accelerated timeline forces a re-rating of the stock.
You got it. It's a bet on timeline compression. The plausibility comes from management's confidence, which seems sky high based on Part A, plus the clear demand for trial spots, and the fact the FDA granted breakthrough therapy, they wouldn't do that lightly. It's a bet that execution speed will trump the historical expense narrative.
Got it. And just to be crystal clear for everyone listening,
This is absolutely not financial advice, just an idea based on the call dynamics.
always do your own research. So, wrapping this up, what's the key takeaway for you, the listener, from this Taysha deep dive?
I think it's about focus and execution. Management seems laser focused. They're using their strong cash position not just to survive, but to actively accelerate towards a potential BLA for what could be a truly disease-modifying therapy.
And the path forward, the regulatory path for TSHA 102, it seems clearer and potentially much faster now than ever before.
Definitely. Which leads to one final provocative thought for you to chew on. What if Taysha blows even their aggressive enrollment timeline out of the water? What if they get those 15 patients dosed in, say, just 2 months?
Faster than the best case 3 months.
Right. How quickly would the market have to reprice the stock when that 6-month interim analysis and the potential for an early BLA suddenly looms even closer? How does that change the perception of that 2028 runway almost overnight?
The power of speed indeed. Food for thought. We definitely encourage you to share your own take on the Taysha call.
Yeah, let us know what you think.
Until next time, thanks for joining us on Talk Tickers.